Welcome to the FanDuel Friday Strategy Breakdown show. It's a new show we're trying, relatively new. We're taking a look at the FanDuel NBA slate for Friday, which should be a pretty wild April Fool's Day. Late season NBA is always interesting. Joined by TJ and Chop. How are you guys doing today?
Good, man. Just breaking the news as we come on the air. It's crazy. It's today's madness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Late season NBA is always wild, and two overtime games last night, so that's adding to the madness a little bit. Teams are getting their playoff seeding secured, and then they're just resting starters in mass. TJ, how you doing? I know you're big on FanDuel. You playing some contests tonight?
Yeah, I'm playing. I'm planning on playing just one big main lineup tonight. I have my very first crunch time appearance this evening, so looking forward to linking up with Meansy for that one. And yeah, it's an interesting day on FanDuel. It's absolute chaos. So I'm excited to break the slate down as the new guy here at RG with a couple of long-term legends.
Well, thank you. I don't know who those legends are. Yeah, no, it should be fun. Good luck on crunch time, man. I mean, that really can be crunch time, especially when you're even entering one lineup. It can be wild. So good luck tonight. I'm sure there won't be any late breaking news or any alterations to lineups you're not expecting. That never really happens.
Giving all of us stuff early. Keep feeding us all this news now so I can just analyze as opposed to having to freak out live show.
Yeah, so I figure for this it's pretty new format, but I think we'll go position by position. We've got the injury news breaking. We'll start off at the point guard position. Chop, what are you thinking of point guard on FanDuel tonight?
I would say pull up the point guards. Generally speaking, before this recent news, like about 30 minutes ago, all the Clippers and Milwaukee player ruled out, and then now Kelly Olynyk is out. But I think my thought is still the same in general tonight. I think everybody's going to gravitate to heavy stars and scrubs. Like and unlike a lot of nights where I could really make a case for, I don't want to play that scrub because he's really bad, or I don't want to play that scrub. Tonight, you're going to have to probably make a case for being different on your stars, because the scrubs, they'll probably get there. They're in too good of a spot, and there's actually too many of them that have really good upside, and they've shown it before. So I think, point guards were, pulling it up here on screen. It looks like high ownership for guys like DeAnthony Melton, Devion Mitchell, Maladone. So, you pick and choose which ones you want. I think they're all going to be successful. So it's going to be, how do we get different? Do we get, I think we get away in other places, though, not necessarily at point guard. So I'm about eating the chalk at point guard. I like those guys that I mentioned, and DeJounte Murray, as if you're into a star and you want a guy who's, you want to fade Jokic or something, then DeJounte Murray is the guy. So point guard, I think, is pretty clear cut tonight.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting dynamic, because I think Luka's in the first game of the night, and I'm not sure we're going to have all these lineups. And so I think the projections are going to be kind of middled a little bit, right? Like we're not sure who's going to be starting in for all these teams that are resting all of their starters. And we may not see some of the outstanding plays at 7 p.m. that we know we're going to see at like 8 p.m., at 9 p.m. So I'm wondering if Luka's maybe going to go a little bit underowned, like maybe a little bit under what he should be. I don't know, TJ, what are you thinking? Are you playing Luka? Is that somebody you're looking at point guard?
Definitely going to be looking at him. But what's interesting is we've seen this big price jump on FanDuel on Luka now. He's been underpriced forever, it seems like. He's been getting all the way down to low 10K, and now he's finally been smashing pretty consistently. And they've finally started paying attention and bumped him up to his rightful price at 11.3. So he's definitely somebody to be looking at. But like you said, we have so much potential value and stuff like that later. I personally think I'm going to be a little bit more interested in somebody like DeJounte Murray as a pay up in that position.
Interesting. Yeah, it's he's playing Portland, and that game worries me a little bit, just because Portland's like totally raised the white flag. So I think it's going to be a tough call. I think between Luka and DeJounte, and I'm probably going to be leaning more towards Luka, but I can absolutely see the DeJounte Murray take as well. It's going to be interesting. I think I'm also interested in Davion Mitchell, DeAnthony Melton. Melton's somebody that's eligible at shooting guard. And so you've got Memphis resting almost all of their starters, but Melton should be playing. Dylan Brooks is somebody that's still going to be playing. So what do you think about the Memphis guys? Chop, shooting guard position.
Shooting guard for Memphis. You know what? Melton, fine. You just figure out a way to get, with the multi-position eligibility, you're just trying to figure out how to get it. So Melton, if you need him at shooting guard, that's fine. A lot kind of opened up here recently at shooting guard. So now you got Coffee and Kennard for the Clippers. They're very interesting now. So now I think everything kind of shifted here on this slate. And this is the way it is like in the last week or so. And we're just kind of getting an early glimpse where it's not even about building a lineup and being happy with it. It's about how many of these guys can I jam in at what position. So shooting guard's loaded now. You got Melton, you could put Murray there. We talk about Luka. Cade Cunningham, I'm not going to go there because of the back-to-back. I'm a little worried about all that stuff, but he's in the mix. And then I just talked about the two Clippers guys now stepping up. I mean, one of those guys against a Milwaukee B team with some of their best defenders out could absolutely be an optimal tonight. So yeah, I'm sticking with I'm probably sticking with a little value here. Like TJ said, DeJounte Murray is the one guy I'd really be looking at if I was going to spend up at one of these two positions. And then we'll talk about, the front court guys later, but that gets really interesting too. But I think I'm still on the value here and the chalky value.
Yeah. And another piece that I think is important to touch on too is like all the positional flexibility is going to be huge on FanDuel tonight, because there's a lot of these guys that have different positional spots that somebody like D'Angelo Russell in a close game, 5,400 underpriced. You can play him both point guard and shooting guard eligibility. Davion Mitchell only available at point guard, but I think that's somewhere I want to eat the chalk tonight. But on the other side of this game for Houston, you have Kevin Porter Jr., point guard or small forward. I think he's a nice contrarian play tonight because that game can go bonkers. And then at the shooting guard position in that game, someone you can also play at point guard, Jalen Green, I think is a very reasonable contrarian play in this game. We talked about how like the Stars and Scrubs build is just going to be the go-to tonight. It's so easy to do it. You got Jokic, you got Doncic, you got maybe LeBron, DeJounte Murray, all of these guys. If you a nice kind of game stack or mini game stack of that Sacramento Houston game, which could go absolutely bonkers, I think is a way of getting a little bit different from the field. And these guard plays like Kevin Porter Jr., Davion Mitchell, and Jalen Green, I think they're all guys that could have huge ceilings tonight.
Is a name there you didn't mention, Josh Christopher. I think he's been over 20 minutes last couple of games. Somebody that I was way overweight on a couple of nights ago, and it paid off for me. It's going to be an interesting night with because we've got Sacramento, Houston, we've got Detroit, Oklahoma City. I mean, it's going to be a great night for the lottery standings as well. And so these games could go bonkers. I mean, some of these teams don't play defense anyway. And even like New Orleans and the Lakers. I mean, I guess the Lakers are still technically in it, and they got LeBron and Anthony Davis potentially coming back. But some of these games have meaning, and some of them don't. And Portland, Sacramento, like there's some high point totals on the board, and it's going to be a crazy night. It's a good Friday night to stay in late swap.
And as somebody, I talked about liking DeJounte Murray too. I think an interesting play at the point guard position before we get too far away is Brandon Williams. He's somebody who's showed a very high ceiling lately. If I like DeJounte Murray and I think this game is going to stay close enough for him to get his minutes, then I kind of have a little bit of interest in Brandon Williams on the other side too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's Tio Maladon is in there as well. If Terrence Mann is Terrence Mann's out, then he's somebody that could be seeing all the point guard minutes for Oklahoma City. It's probably a good night to spread out your options a little bit more than the optimizer will tell you to do. Because I think the optimizer is going to tell you to just load up on Luka, DeJounte Murray, and Jokic. There's guys that are really underpriced. They could be putting up 40 FanDuel points tonight, especially you start adding those steals up. So yeah, I think you're going to have to probably end up going underweight some of the higher value guys just to try to get some of these outstanding value plays or potentially outstanding value plays.
I agree completely. And I think Josh Christopher is a great one you mentioned as a way to get different than the field on a value play, somebody who's shown a 10x ceiling just a couple games ago. And tonight's a great night. I couldn't agree with you more. Tonight's a great night to differentiate if you're playing in large field contests in FanDuel. You look at the type of contest they're offering tonight. They got the Friday layup for $9, 100K to first. The prize pools drop drastically right after that 100K. So it's the perfect time to get different. There's no point firing out there the same lineups as everybody else because you're not trying to get 10th place tonight and win $500. You want to get first place and win $100,000. And so differentiating could be the way you do that. And I'm not going to tell you not to play Nikola Jokic because Nikola Jokic is a smash spot. I think there's absolute warrant to just locking him in tonight. But some of these value guys like Josh Christopher or getting more exposure to that Sacramento-Houston game in general, maybe if you're playing DeJounte Murray, play some of these Portland guys along with them. I think that's a way to differentiate yourself and find a way to get that top spot on the FanDuel prize pool tonight.
I think that's so true. I think if you're really aiming for that top spot, a lot of times, especially late in the season, you have to be picking some guys that most NBA fans don't even know. I mean, I was looking at the Detroit game last night or a couple of nights ago, and I guess it was just last night. And Braxton Key was playing over 20 minutes. He's somebody who's small forward eligible. He's cheap. He's near the minimum price. Olynyk is out now. Bagley's out. I think Corey Joseph was ruled out as well. So they're going to be filling those minutes with these younger guys. They're signing to small contracts. So yeah, I guess Chop, looking at the small forward position, not necessarily Braxton Key, but is there anybody that's piquing your interest there?
This is probably, there's still really good players here. This is probably the weaker position for me out of the 5 positions, even though you can still get a lot done here. There's a lot of good ones, but I like what TJ said about Kevin Porter. You could play, that's a point guard. And in a shootout, you could play him at small forward. So I like that. I like the Clippers guys are still in the mix. I'm a little bit surprised that we currently have Jason Tatum so highly owned tonight. I would have thought he would kind of fly a little bit under the radar at that. I liked him a lot more when I thought he was going to be a little bit less owned than that. But Dylan Brooks, I think, is another guy. Somebody from Memphis is gonna have a pretty good game. And I will talk about more in just a minute at the next position, a guy I really like. But Dylan Brooks has shown he can be a really good player too. And so, again, I think Kevin Porter Jr. is not a value play necessarily. He's kind of, he's up there in the price range. So this might be the position where we get crazy, get different. Is we'll talk about it in a minute, but there's only 3 spots between power forward and center that you can take. And there's a lot of power forward / center only eligible guys. So a lot of good players are going to get left off your list over there. For me, that might be Jokic. So where do I spend at? Maybe I come back over here at small forward where I don't think it's the deepest pull tonight. Maybe I pull a guy like LeBron out, something like that. And who right now we currently have projected for, less than 13% ownership right now, which that's pretty good for a guy like LeBron to get him on there. So I think small forward is the best position to kind of mix it up a little bit.
And so
Right.
interestingly enough, like I agree with Chop completely that I like mixing it up, but I love the pool of small forwards today. Like, and so I agree that it's the spot to get different, but I'm actually really excited to get different with some of these guys. Like I'm looking at my pool right now. I'm trying to condense it. I have 18 small forwards right now that I think are all reasonable plays. Now that includes LeBron James, who is still currently questionable, but we have guys like Jordan Nwora is currently projecting at 6% ownership. Now I'm sure that's changed. This Milwaukee news isn't that old yet. I'm sure it'll get new, but Jordan Nwora, I think, has potential to be the very best value option on the entire slate. And so I think this is an interesting type of slate where, to me, I actually don't think the pay up options are where I want to get different. I think the value is. I think I want to just have 2 or 3 of these studs in all my lineups and mix and match around it. But Kevin Porter Jr. in that whole Houston Sacramento game, I like as well. Jayshawn Tate, 4K, only 3% owned right now. That just seems bonkers to me. Like that's the type of thing that I want to get to tonight. The Jordan Nworas, the Jayshawn Tates, the Sadiq Bays, the Dylan Brooks, all guys sub 20%. We got Robert Covington over 20% right now, and Luke Kennard sub 20%. If this game is just getting sloppy, they know they're sitting players. I don't think Robert Covington's going to be the one who gets 34 minutes tonight. I think it's probably going to be some of these younger guys, Luke Kennards, the Amir Coffees, guys like that, Isaiah Hartenstein. They're probably going to be the ones who have their minutes pushed, as opposed to the Zubats and the Robert Covingtons. So I really like getting different here, just like Chop said. And there's some of these spots that, like, Harrison Barnes, 5.3. I don't love the play, but he's 3% owned. Pat Connaughton, we got him projected for 3% owned right now. OG Anunoby, still below 6K. We got him sub 10%. So I think especially a lot of these Houston values who disappointed the other night. And we obviously still have Şengün questionable. We're waiting on that news. But a lot of these Houston values disappointed the other night. So it doesn't look like the people are going to go back there with ownership. And I really like differentiating with them.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Sadiq Bey. It's somebody that's been underpriced the last couple of weeks. I mean, I guess a couple of weeks ago he was 7,400. He's now 5,600. So he's been underpriced. Now Olynyk's out, Bagley's out, like Corey Joseph is out. That's probably more shots for Sadiq Bey, and he's only 5,600. I mean, somebody's gonna have to shoot the ball other than Cade Cunningham on the Pistons. So yeah, he's somebody that I'm interested in. And then these Clippers guys, I think Terrence Mann always seems to like turn it on when Paul George has been out, if Reggie Jackson's not on the court, especially in last season when Kawhi was out, it always seemed like Terrence Mann would take over the offense. It's a guy to put up over 34 FanDuel points, previously, and now they're resting all of the starters, right? Like Marcus Morris is out. So yeah, I mean, there's some good value plays, and I mentioned Jordan Nwora. I think that's really interesting because I don't think we're necessarily going to know the Bucks starting lineup. And I think projections are maybe going to have him maybe on our site, on other sites, as not being in the starting lineup, but he could be. I mean, he's somebody that like end of last season went berserk, right? The same scenarios when the Bucks were resting everybody. So yeah, I think that's a good call. So I think moving to the power forward position, I think we've got one of the more interesting situations of the night because Anthony Davis is 7,600, but it's the last game of the night. And that's a really cheap price for Anthony Davis. But like if he ends up not starting, or if there's ends up being a big minute restriction on him, then you're kind of stuck. So Chop, you mentioned having some interesting power forward only options. Who are you looking at?
So my favorite play amongst the big guys, power forward / center, is Brandon Clark. I like him a lot. And I'm thinking now, as opposed to a few hours ago, I'm thinking now maybe he kind of slides a little bit lesser owned because there's just so much value out there that maybe he gets lost in the shuffle between these two positions. You can only take 3 players, right? So if somebody's going to lock up their center position with Jokic, and we think he's going to be pretty high owned, and then you've got Bobby Portis now. Right now we got him at 54% on FanDuel. Like, that's a lot. And that's another spot right there that people are locking in power forward. So what else are they going to do? Olynyk would have been the guy, but he got ruled out. So There's several other candidates. So maybe Brandon Clark flies under the radar as he's only power forward eligible. So he's a guy I like, man. I've watched him a lot in his career over the last few years. He's got like 8 40-plus point FanDuel games, and he doesn't even play that much, you know. So and tonight we're expecting him to play a little bit and get a little bit of extra usage under his belt. So Brandon Clark, I really like him. I think the ownership's going to slide down a little bit by game time, and he'll be one of my heavily owned players.
Nobody's mentioned Kyle Anderson yet, but Memphis is resting all these guys. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's going to take over a bunch of the usage. But he's cheap, right? I think he's at 4,200. Yeah, 4,200, small forward, power forward eligible. So I like the Brandon Clark call. I like, Kyle Anderson could sneak in there. I mean, he's somebody that's putting up 20 FanDuel points consistently when guys are in the starting lineup, and now they're all out. So he could be picking up some more usage. Just worries me a little bit. He's probably not going to take over the game, but I like. We're going to have a lot of Memphis guys showing up in lineups, and I think Kyle Anderson's an interesting pivot. TJ, what do you think at the power forward spot?
I think today's such a fun day to be doing this show, because I think it's really important to touch on the type of plays you're doing should really depend on the type of contest you're doing. For cash games, for single entry stuff tonight, like we're going to have some just clear lock and load amazing values tonight, like a Bobby Portis, who we're projecting at over 50% ownership. If you're playing cash, if you're playing single entry, it's going to be really, really damn hard not to play Bobby Portis, because we're projecting him at 8x. Like he could easily 10x that salary tonight. It's way too cheap. He's probably going to have a 30% usage rate with all these guys off of the court. So there's stuff like that like if you're single entry tonight, it's going to be real tough not to play him. If you're trying to win that 100K, if you're trying to win something that's a large field, there are so many guys with high ceilings tonight that are going to pick up no ownership. Drew Eubanks has been absolutely smashing, and he's playing the Spurs tonight. No ownership. Anthony Davis, it's scary, but because of that, he's probably going to play. He's trending towards playing. He's not getting any ownership because people kind of want to wait and see. Isaiah Roby, Isaiah Hartenstein, Isaiah Stewart, the 3 Isaiahs. All 3 of these are 3 great GPP plays that could all absolutely smash that no one is going to play. So I think it's really important to kind of look at what contest am I playing in. If I'm trying to win 100K tonight, as amazing as a play as Bobby Portis is, he might not be the way to do it.
See, it's interesting. You mentioned 3 Isaiahs. You didn't mention Isaiah Livers, who's on my my list of
and Isaiah Livers. He's there too. I just he scares me a little bit, just because I think to win a tournament tonight, you're gonna need it's gonna be bare minimum 450. Unless all of the studs fail, it's gonna be bare minimum 450. It's gonna be obscene. So the guys like the Brandon Clarks, the Xavier Tillmans, some of these guys, I like their ceilings a little bit more than a guy like Isaiah Livers. And you touched on Kyle Anderson too. He just scares the crap out of me. I know he projects well, but I hate playing Kyle Anderson.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Isaiah Livers was a guy I was thinking could be a really sneaky play before the value all opened up, and now it's suddenly we might have a bunch of guys that are 3,500 that are in the starting lineup, so don't necessarily need to dig that deep into the bench, right? If we can be playing Jordan Nwora and he ends up starting, then we probably don't need to be going all the way down to to get an Isaiah Livers.
I mean, having said that, we're projecting him to start right now, now that Olenek is ruled out. And I mean, if you get Isaiah Livers in the starting lineup, they're playing OKC. I think if you're running that 150, if you're running 150 max and you're trying to win that 100K, I definitely think he can stay in the pool for sure.
I think something I'll probably do, assuming we don't have all the starting lineups, is just projecting some 3,500 guys at every position as being outstanding values who play later in the night. And that way I can swap, as guys. So maybe I'm projecting Trey Murphy, Isaiah Livers, guys that have the not 7 p.m., not 7:30 p.m. start times, so that then I'm going to assume someone at that range is going to be in the starting lineup or playing a prominent role off the bench that I can then just late swap to them, especially if I'm multi-entering.
Yeah, and it's this, just like the small forward, just like Chop hit, this is a crazy spot for you to differentiate, and you'll be able to get phenomenal plays at just absolutely no ownership. Like even at like looking at these value spots, Greg Brown projected to start against San Antonio, 3,700, 3% ownership. Serge Ibaka could end up getting a bunch of minutes tonight. KJ Martin, if what's his face, if Şengün is out, he disappointed the other night, but he could come right back and have a great game. Jayshawn Tate, Mo Wagner with Wendell Carter Jr. out, Jared Vanderbilt, Xavier Tillman, Chuma Okeke, all of these guys could put up 10x games based on those price tags. So it's a great spot to try and get different.
Yeah, and you mentioned Serge Ibaka. It's interesting because a lot of times the starting lineups don't necessarily reflect who's going to be getting all the minutes. And I'm going to be pretty wary of veterans, especially like you mentioned, like Bobby Portis at over 50% ownership. I mean, sometimes those guys play the first half, but like we've seen in these April games, like the coach will roll out an entirely different lineup in the second half. They just want to play the veterans, keep them warm the first half of the game. But then, that's a way that Bobby Portis ends up not getting there. And sometimes they just go totally youth. Like Bobby Portis is a significant part of their rotation. Maybe they don't want him to get hurt right late in April when they're about to roll into the playoffs. So maybe he's just playing, a few minutes. Maybe he's just playing a half. We don't know. Like Chop, how are you going to differentiate your lineups? Is it, are you fading Bobby Portis, or are you going to be playing him in all your lineups? What are you thinking?
That's a good question. And I thought I had an answer, but now I'm looking at it a little bit closer, and I'm seeing some guys that really jump out to me at lower ownership at this position. So we have, nobody's mentioned, and the ownership reflects it. Nobody's mentioned Porzingis without Kuzma tonight.
Like a revenge spot.
2% revenge.
Can't wait to talk about Porzingis's revenge to Meansy on crunch time tonight.
He's averaged like almost 50 FanDuel points a game when Kuzma's been out of the lineup since he got to his new team. So super interesting. I'm looking now, and I'm seeing those guys that are less than 5% owned. So I don't know, man. It's tough, but I think there's definitely merit to getting a lot different at this position.
Yeah, I agree. Porzingis is somebody who would scare me in a single entry, but somebody who I'd want to be like, I think 5 times the field on if he's going to be keeping that low of ownership if I'm MMEing.
You can compare him with Luka, right? Like that the 7 p.m. game. I think people are going to shy away from that 7 p.m. game a little bit because they don't want to get their lineups locked. And I think, I think there's something to be said for maintaining flexibility. But like when you're looking at Luka, when you're looking at Porzingis, like these are guys that can put up 50 points. Porzingis can put up 50, Luka can put up 80, and then you're shot before your lineups even start the night. Really. So yeah,
I think that you're right on all night, but I also think that's how you can get different tonight is lock these players in. Like there's nothing that's going to open up in the New Orleans Lakers game that's going to be better than what we already know right now. So maybe go ahead and lock them in early and be different that way. I've seen guys who run nothing but that first set of games, end up winning the GPP. It just breaks down like that sometimes. But I could see locking everybody in nice and early and taking what's on the board and winning.
And that's the thing too, is like if you're running a Porzingis Luka mini stack and you're locking that in, you're still fine to be able to adjust to the news. Like we know a ton of players who are already out. We just don't know starting lineups. So there's going to be tons of min price to close to min price guys that you're going to be easily to swap to, even though you already have a few locked positions there.
So the one thing on FanDuel though, like if you lock somebody into center position, you're not going to be able to play Jokic. I think he's going to see extremely high ownership tonight. And I think it's going to take out, also take away some of the ownership of the other center only eligible guys. Like it's looking at Karl Anthony Towns is in that same game. We just put up 80 points a few weeks ago. Like I think he's going to see really minimal ownership just because if you're saving all this money with all of this value, like I don't think we're going to see him get the ownership there. I think we've gotten like 25% ownership. That would really surprise me because I think people are just going to pay up for Jokic. There's almost unlimited value. So I think people are going to spend up.
And so another interesting part just on the Bobby Portis, do I play Bobby Portis? Do I not play Bobby Portis aspect? And I'm kind of going to give another both sides of the argument here. So I don't know if this is going to help anybody, but even though all these Bucks guys are out, the Bucks still want to win this game. They're half game behind Miami right now for that 1 seed in the East. They didn't rule out all of these players until after the Clippers already ruled out everybody. So it was one of those things that like they looked at it and think, okay, I think we can still beat these guys now that they're not going to have any of their players. So let's give our big guys a rest. So I think the ones who are playing are still going to be getting solid minutes, fighting for that win. But there's a almost straight line pivot, slightly more expensive. That's not going to get much ownership because of that Q tag. And if Şengün plays, that's somebody that is going to come in low owned and that could absolutely smash and win you a GPP. Like he could break the slate. If Bobby Portis ends with 25 points and Şengün ends with 50, and you're somebody who's way over the field on Şengün and way under the field on Portis, that's a situation where you're really putting yourself in a good position to win that 100K.
Just looking through the game logs, Şengün, I guess since with February 16th, 48 FanDuel points, like 49 in early March. He's only 5,700. I think that questionable tag is going to scare people off. I think that's one of the big decision points of the night, because I think you've got to keep that spot open. And thankfully, at 5,700, Bobby Portis is starting at the 8 o'clock spot. There's Trey Lyles is right there. You don't necessarily want to be playing a ton of Trey Lyles, but he did well the other night. And I think Şengün is somebody that we've looked at as a huge point per minute guy. And now suddenly he could be a more focal point of the offense, with like Christian Wood out, Eric Gordon's out. So I think he's going to be popular, but probably not as popular as he should be with that questionable tag.
Yeah, and he's a real easy guy, exactly like you said, to just get way over the field on, because you can pivot to Isaiah Stewart. Is that game at 8 o'clock or is that game at 7? Yeah, you can pivot to Isaiah Stewart at 100 more. Trey Lyles a little less. Harrison Barnes a little less. Bobby Portis a lot less. So there's a lot of straight line pivots that even if you don't have a lot of other flexibility, you can still make nice choices.
Yeah. So it should be a wild night. That'll about wrap it up. Any last thoughts, gentlemen?
Go for it, TJ.
Find your ways to get different. If you're playing lots of Jokic, get different with the value. If you're playing different studs, you're all right playing chalk value, but don't play all the same for everything. Don't feel like you got to get totally crazy different for everything. If you're playing the chalky studs, get different on your value and vice versa.
And I would say just make your lineup, like TJ said, according to what contest you're in, man. If you're in a 200-man single entry, eat the chalk. Don't be scared. Get different in one spot. One spot's all it takes. If you're playing for against 300,000 people trying to make this big ass prize at the end, you have to be different. You have to go outside the comfort zone and try to get a little bit crazy.
Excellent thoughts. All right, that wraps up the Friday FanDuel strategy breakdown. Good luck to everybody in the contest tonight.